Have you ever driven around and looked out the window, gazed out and thought, I wonder what kind of creatures live out there? What's under that scrub or under those bushes out there? I was doing that as I was looking out the window on the way home from Port Pirie yesterday. And when I'm travelling around in areas that I'm not familiar with, like different kinds of country, I think I'm a bit familiar as to what we might have at home, but what do they have out there? There's a lot of ways that they do try to find out, and they're doing some pitfall trapping out on country at Yellowbinna at the moment. Brett Backhouse is an ecologist with the Alanjajara Williara Landscape Board. Good morning.
Morning, Emma. How are you?
Yeah, good. Now, exactly where are you today?
Yeah, so I'm up in the northwest corner of Yellowbinna Regional Reserve in a spot that's not really very publicly accessible, but a lot of people probably know Yellowbinna for the Googs track, which runs from Ceduna up towards Tarcoola. We're a fair bit further west than that. We're about 120 kilometres or so from there. Probably 300 kilometres from Ceduna, give or take, as the crow flies.
It's pretty amazing you've actually got service.
Yeah, we're bouncing, we think, off the rail line or maybe the Iluka mine. And I've got a big booster set up so we could talk to you without too much of a hassle rather than using the sat phone.
Well, it's one of the clearest phone lines I've had on the radio today, and you're in the middle of nowhere. So just describe what it looks like when you're looking around at that land in front of you this morning.
Yeah, so where I'm standing at the moment is on a big, it's a dune field, so I'm up on a really high red sand dune, which drops into some big swales, and I can see dunes for as far as I can see to the west, to the east, to the north, and to the south. And it's just lots of small shrubs and trees. We've got lots of eucalyptus around here, and there's a few black oak groves in the distance I can see as well. And then the ground cover is basically a spinifex cover, which is that spiky porcupine grass that people probably don't really like getting in their legs, but that's pretty well the dominant sort of cover. It's cloudy today at the moment. It's not too cold. It was I think it was 7 degrees this morning when we first got up, but I think it's maybe up to 9 now. It's much warmer.
You've been camping out on country out there. It's not just an early morning casual drive out 300 kilometres outside of Ceduna to do some pitfall trapping. Just talk us through what's underway.
Yeah, so pitfall trapping, it's a week-long exercise. We've got this site here has been long-term monitored for about 15 or 16 years. So we've got pitfall traps in the ground, which basically it's like a bucket. A lot of them are stormwater pipes that are dug into the ground, and then they're connected up. We've got aluminium fly screen that gets cut into sections. So they're 30 metres long, about 300 meters high, and then they're dug into the ground to make a temporary fence. And any animals that are walking along bump into the fence and it tends to funnel them towards the pits. They'll drop into the pitfall trap. And then we've got, because it's a little bit cooler at the moment, we've got toilet rolls in there, no toilet paper on them. And then we've got things like alpaca fleece, and we've got bits of cloth. And then we put some leaves down there and a little bit of bird seed. And there's a bit of sand as well. And it gives them shelter to hide so that they don't get cold at night. And then we've been getting up sort of 5:45. The sun's sort of up here at about 7. We drive out to the site and then we start clearing the traps and what we call processing the animals. So whatever we've caught, we'll get them out, have a quick look to work out what the species is to start with, work out the gender, and then we do a few measurements. We take weights for mammals. If we've got reptiles, we measure the snout vent length and the tail length, and then we put a little mark on them, the texture, and then we let them go pretty well straight away in a safe spot, and then they can scurry away. And the idea with the texture is if we get them tomorrow, we know we've caught them again. We don't need to measure them. We just let them go. So we do this first thing.
They're just coming back for the warm fleece.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's probably warmer than everywhere else. But and we get everything processed pretty quick. So we're pretty much done this morning. And then we've got the afternoon with some measurements on plants through the day. And then we do an afternoon check where we go through and check so that there's any reptiles mainly that come out during the day that have fallen into the pits. We get them out and do the same thing with them and let them go so that they're not in the pit overnight getting cold or anything happens. So we've got lots of processes so nothing gets injured.
All right. What marsupials or other like native animals did you find this morning?
Well, so far this morning we've had quite a few hopping mice. So we've got a native hopping mouse out through Yellowbinna and much of the Eyre Peninsula they call it Mitchell's hopping mice, and the Tomies mitchelli. We've got a few of those this morning. We've got a few sandy inland mice. So We know there's lots of mice problems around Eyre Peninsula again at the moment. That's not the mouse that we're catching out here. They look very similar, but the native one is more of a nice sort of brown, sandy colour. They've got a white belly. Same sort of size as the house mouse. They don't smell like house mice, and they don't plague quite as much. So we've got a couple of those. And we've got one sandhill done so far this morning. I haven't seen the other. There's another group that does the other pits, so we're making sure we get everything done. We'll check in with them in another hour or so and see what they got. But, that was the one we're sort of out here for, mainly that sandhill done up.
Yeah, okay. So how many, sorry, I might have missed you saying it. How long have you been out there so far?
So today is the third morning. So far, I think all up, we know we've got 13 sandhill dunuts, which is quite good. That's quite a high number of sandhill dunuts, and I think probably all up, probably sort of 15 hopping mice, and a few different little species of dunut. There's a little long-tailed dunut. There's a hairy-footed dunut out here.
A hairy dunut?
Yeah, little hairy foot. They've got very, very hairy feet. It's quite funny when you get them out, and it's probably got something to do with the sand, the habitat they live in. A lot of people don't really know much about why these animals have hairy feet or hairy tails. The sandhill dunut's got a black comb underneath its tail, which makes it really quite recognisable. There's lots of theories as to why, but no one probably really knows exactly why.
Oh, do you call them the Tolkiens or something?
We could. I'm not sure.
No, very interesting. All right. How about reptiles? What have you been finding? Because it's a cool time of year for reptiles.
It is. We don't normally do a lot of trapping out here quite so late, but we've got, what do we call? We've got a knobtail gecko out here. They're called smooth knobtail geckos, Nephurus levissimus. We've got one or two of those. We've got a couple of, just a skink that runs around there, that's Tenotus atlas, which has got sort of 10 lines. You see them probably similar to things people see scurrying around their gardens, hiding under their pots. A couple of those. No snakes. It's probably a bit too cold for that. I'm just trying to think. Maybe, that's probably about it. It's quite cool. So when you come out and trap in these areas in summer or in warmer times, we do this a lot. In October, we get a lot more reptiles. We get literally a couple of hundred of some species. The knobtail gecko are very common up here. And then we've got quite a few different types of snakes that we catch. Not a lot of them aren't venomous to humans. They've got very, very small fangs that can't actually get you. So there's a banded snake that is quite pretty that is venomous. It eats very, very small skinks, but it can't bite humans. But we get those little guys in the pits quite often as well. But it's just a little bit too cold. So the reptile numbers are down on normal. But as I said, we're really here to check on our sandhill dunuts and the mammals that are living in this area at the moment.
We're speaking with ecologist Brett Backhouse, who's out joining us on the phone, bouncing off a couple of signals out there in the northwest corner of Yellow Binner, about 300 kilometres out from Ceduna. 120 kilometres, did you say, away from Goog's Track? Yeah,
we at least that far to the west of Goog's Track.
Yeah. So who is out there with you?
I've got a couple of people from AW. Dr. John Reed's out here as well. And then we've got some researchers who are doing some work on some grass wrens, and they're just looking for some signs of the species out here. They just walk around looking for signs, looking for calls, and very passive compared to what we're doing. They don't catch or anything. It's very much oral sort of stuff that they're after.
Okay, yeah, interesting. So when you look at the populations this year compared to other years, you've talked about other times of the year and other seasons, but what is it saying about the wildlife that you're seeing?
Looking pretty good. It's obviously, we know how the rainfall's been over South Australia over the last couple of years. We've come off a couple of years of drought. 18 and 19 was pretty dry, so we trapped here at last in 2020. And mammal numbers were a little bit down on what we sort of expect. We've obviously had some wet years, and we're seeing what we think is the end of that. We're seeing quite a few. We've got more sandhill dunuts than average. We've still got a whole day to go, so they're sort of up. The hopping mice are probably up a little bit as well, even though it's a bit cooler. These mammals still come out at night, and this is just following on from these rainfall events. So one of the biggest problems for these little mammals, though, is the fact that after these events, we're going to see things like cats and foxes. They're going to increase as well. There's a bit of a lag, so they'll catch up. And then, unfortunately, what tends to happen, it tends to dry off a little bit. and the prey for the cats and the foxes, these are feral cats obviously, decrease, and then they'll start hunting a lot more of these native mammals. So there might be a bit of a problem coming up. So there's a lot of, we're still trying to work on doing stuff with feral cats, and a lot of people are around the country. And this is something that needs to continue on. It's just one of these cycles that happens, and obviously it's getting colder as well. The reptiles aren't in as much abundance. If there's more cats and foxes here at the moment, they're going to prey a lot more on the sandhill dunnarts or the hopping mice or our living gowies or pygmy possums or whatever they can get. So there's still risk with it. It's one of these boom and bust cycles that flows along. We get a good year, everything goes up. Unfortunately, cats and foxes also do. And then it dries off, things drop away, and the cats and foxes sort of keep predating as they do, but numbers drop, and it can cause some big problems down the track.
Brett Backhouse, we'll let you go and get back into it, and hopefully you can catch up with that other team soon, and the dunnarts are even in greater populations than you thought. Thanks for your time today.
No worries. Thanks for having us.
Good on you. Alan Tijara, Williara Landscape Board Ecologist Brett Backhouse.